I never imagined that the first time I wore a wedding dress, it would be someone else's name stitched into the lace of my life. I was 24, and nothing about that day belonged to me. Not the silk gown hugging my waist, not the bouquet trembling in my hands, not even the name whispered over and over by guests as they turned to smile at the bride. Erica. But I wasn't Erica. Erica was my older sister. The one everyone adored, the one who always stood at the center while I lingered on the edges. She was everything I wasn't: confident, captivating, calculating. And now gone. 3 days before her wedding, she vanished. Just a note on the dresser. No explanation. No goodbye. By the time I found out, my mother was already pulling out her arsenal of emotional warfare. She stood behind me in my room, eyes hard and voice colder than the metal zipper she yanked up on that white gown. "You owe us," she whispered. "Erica's gone. If this wedding falls through, we lose everything." Everything. That word had haunted our home since I was a child. Everything depended on Erica. On appearances. On alliances. On control. Now, everything depended on me. I had no idea what scared me more: walking down the aisle pretending to be my sister, or the fact that I had already been doing so for months. Ever since the engagement was arranged, Erica had wanted nothing to do with Elliot. A blind man, she'd scoffed. "How romantic," she said sarcastically, before handing me the phone and telling me to talk to him in her place. She had better things to do. So I spoke to him. As Erica. Dozens of calls. I learned how to match her tone, her phrasing, even the way she laughed at jokes she didn't care about. And Elliot, he listened, with a kind of presence that unnerved me. He remembered every word I said, even when I forgot I was supposed to be someone else. He would ask about details I barely recalled, mention things I'd let slip. I didn't think much of it at the time. But now, as I walked down the aisle toward him, his eyes fixed forward but somehow still knowing, I panicked. My heels felt like prison chains. Each step was a lie. The guests stood. Music swelled. I clutched my bouquet tighter, knuckles aching, trying to keep my breathing steady. All I wanted was to make it through the ceremony without crumbling. He stood at the altar, elegant in his tailored black suit, his expression calm. Elliot Warren, smart, reserved, far too observant for someone I needed to fool. When I reached him, he took my hand. His fingers closed gently around mine.
And he paused.
I felt it. He didn't move.
Didn't flinch.
But I knew. Something was off to him. My hand, maybe. The way I held it. Or maybe my silence was louder than I thought. "You smell different," he whispered, so only I could hear. My heart dropped into my stomach. I forced a smile that I hoped looked like Erica's. "New perfume." He nodded once. Said nothing more. But I saw the subtle tension in his jaw. The flicker of unease behind his otherwise composed face. The ceremony went on. I repeated vows I never believed in. I signed a name that didn't belong to me. And all the while, I felt Elliot watching, not with his eyes, but with something deeper. His hand never left mine, but his grip changed. Like he was testing me, searching for the familiar rhythm we'd built over months of phone calls. I tried to match it.
Failed.
That night, after the toasts and dancing, when we finally sat alone in the car on the way to his estate, he turned toward me. "You're quieter than usual," he said. "I'm just overwhelmed," I replied quickly, keeping my voice steady. "It's been a long day." Another pause. Then a smile. "I thought you'd be humming." My breath caught. It was true. During most of our phone calls, I hummed when I was nervous. Soft tunes, barely noticeable. It wasn't something I'd done today. I gave a weak laugh. "Not much to hum about today." He nodded slowly, the smile never quite reaching his eyes. No accusations. No confrontation. Just knowing. And that scared me more than if he'd yelled. Because Elliot Warren wasn't the kind of man you could lie to forever. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, staring at the silk-covered walls of a room that belonged to someone else's life. My dress had been replaced with a simple white slip. My hair was down. My nerves were high, and Elliot was seated across the room in an armchair, sipping the chamomile tea I had made, without thinking. I hadn't even asked if he liked chamomile.
It just felt right.
You make tea differently, he said quietly, without accusation. Just a simple statement. I looked up. How do you mean? The way you stir it. Erica always used the spoon to clink against the side of the cup sharply.
You swirl it. Softer.
My fingers tightened around the fabric at my side. Maybe I'm just tired tonight. Maybe, he said with a small smile. But you also placed the sugar on the left. She always put it on the right. I froze, heart pounding, then forced a laugh, shaky and paper-thin. Does it matter which side the sugar goes on? To most people? Probably not. But I noticed things, even in the dark. I felt heat creep up my neck. He wasn't being cruel. He was almost gentle. There was no edge to his voice, no anger. But I could feel him peeling back layers I didn't even know I'd wrapped around myself. He set the teacup down. You read out loud earlier. From that book on the shelf. I nodded. You said you missed reading. Erica never read to me. She didn't think I needed it. My chest tightened. I like your voice, he added, his face still turned toward me. But it's not hers.
Not really.
I stood and busied myself with folding a shawl, anything to keep my hands from shaking. It's been a long day, Elliot. Maybe we should get some sleep. He didn't press. Just nodded and rose from his chair, walking toward the bed with sure steps. I guided him gently, my hand resting lightly on his arm. His skin was warm, steady. When he lay down beside me, he didn't reach for me. He simply said, "Good night,
Mia."
I almost stopped breathing, but he didn't repeat it, didn't question it. And in the silence that followed, I lay there wide awake, wondering if I was starting to care too much. The next morning, I woke early, long before the staff was expected to serve breakfast. For reasons I didn't fully understand, I walked down to the kitchen myself. I made his favorite tea, yes, real favorite, not the one Erica pretended to like. I remembered now. He'd mentioned once, offhandedly, that he preferred green tea in the mornings, not black. I took it to his study, knocked softly, and entered when he called out. He sat by the window, reading Braille, with a focused touch. "You're up early," he said without looking up. "I thought I'd bring you tea," I replied. He paused. "Green?" "Yes." He smiled. "Thank you." I lingered for a moment, unsure why. Then I sat across from him. "Do you want me to read to you again tonight?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was thoughtful. "Only if you want to." "I do." Something shifted between us in that moment, something quiet but strong. It wasn't part of the act anymore. I wasn't pretending to be Erica when I asked. I wasn't trying to deceive. I just wanted to.
Days passed like that.
I found myself waking up earlier, slipping into the kitchen, setting his tea on the left, arranging the sugar how he liked it, even helping him pick his clothes. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to make his world easier in the ways I could. And he noticed. "You dress me differently," he said once, running his hands down the jacket I'd chosen for him. "You fold the sleeves inward instead of rolling them." I looked up at him, unsure how to respond. "I like it," he added. "It's neater." That evening, we sat in the sunroom, the last of the light casting golden streaks across the furniture. I read from the book he'd chosen. He'd asked me to pick something he hadn't read in years. His face was relaxed, his fingers gently drumming on the armrest in rhythm to the story. I saw in him a depth I hadn't expected. He was thoughtful, witty, and deeply observant. Not just a blind millionaire, not just a name in a family deal, but a man. One who didn't deserve this lie. One night, while lighting a candle in the hallway, I caught my reflection in the glass. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She wasn't scared or cold or calculating. She looked conflicted. Because the more I cared for Elliot, the more it tore me apart inside. He deserved the truth, but I didn't know how to give it without destroying the fragile trust that was growing between us. I sat beside him later, hands folded tightly, watching his face as he talked about his plans for a new foundation supporting young blind entrepreneurs. His passion, his vision, it was beautiful. And it wasn't just admiration I felt. It was guilt. Because I was falling for him, not as Erica, but as me.
As Mia.
And every quiet kindness he gave, every time he listened without judgment, every moment he let me be seen without seeing me, it made me question if I could live with the lie I'd been forced to carry. Or if someday I'd have to break his heart to be honest with mine. I was arranging fresh flowers in the hallway vase when I heard the heavy front doors swing open. The air changed instantly. My hands froze over the petals, and a chill ran down my spine before I even turned to see them. My mother's heel struck the marble like a war drum, followed closely by the sharp click of Erica's. My sister stood there in her designer coat and sunglasses, as if she hadn't disappeared, and let me step into the fire she lit. "Mia," my mother hissed through clenched teeth, her eyes burning with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Erica gave me a smirk, smug and cruel. "Hope you didn't get too comfortable playing house." I straightened my shoulders and kept my voice calm. "You left 3 days before the wedding. You didn't give anyone a choice." Erica's laugh was cold.
Please.
"This wasn't your story to finish. You were always the backup plan." My mother stepped closer. "That wedding wasn't about love. It was about business. Do you have any idea what's at stake? Elliot's next merger is worth billions. He's not just a husband, he's leverage." I clenched my jaw.
He's a human being.
"Not a deal. Not a prize." "You signed his name on a legal document," Erica snapped. "Pretending to be me? That's fraud." "No," I said, pulling the papers from the drawer behind me and laying them on the table.
He signed. I signed.
The wedding was real. Legal. And I never claimed to be you that day. Not in writing. Just in name. And you gave me no choice." Erica rolled her eyes. "You think a signature makes you a wife? You were just filling in. You're a stand-in for the real thing. A placeholder." I felt the sting in my chest, but I didn't look away. Maybe I was. At first. But not anymore. My mother folded her arms. "You've always been soft, Mia. That's why we didn't want you involved in any of this. You think love matters. But it doesn't. Survival does." "You're wrong," I said quietly. "Elliot deserves someone who sees him. Not someone who tolerates him because he's rich. He needs honesty, care, and kindness. You wouldn't understand that. You never taught us that." Just then, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "I think I've heard enough." Elliot's presence filled the room like sunlight piercing through storm clouds. He stood there calmly, dressed in a dark sweater and jeans, cane in hand, but his posture was relaxed. My heart thudded in my chest. I didn't know how long he'd been listening. He turned slightly in my direction. "Mia, would you take a walk with me?" I nodded without speaking and followed him out the back door into the gardens. The evening air was cool, the scent of lavender and roses lingering on the breeze. We walked in silence for a few minutes, his steps unhurried, mine measured. Then finally he spoke. I knew. I stopped.
"What?"
He turned his face toward me. "That you weren't Erica. I knew almost immediately. Your voice was similar, but softer. Your movements different. Even your laugh." I felt like the earth had dropped out beneath me. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to see what you would do," he said simply. "If you'd run. If you'd tell the truth. If you were here because you had to be, or because you chose to be." I sat down on the stone bench nearby, burying my face in my hands. I didn't choose it at first. I was pushed into it. Mom said we'd lose everything. Erica vanished. I was scared. Elliot sat beside me, not touching, but close. "You made me tea. You read to me. You placed your hand gently on mine when I was thinking." Those weren't things Erica would have done. And I started hoping they were real. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. They were. He turned his face slightly. "So, who are you?" I looked down at my lap. "My name is Mia. I'm 24. I studied interior design. I used to believe I wasn't good at anything unless someone else told me I was." He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Why didn't you leave when you had the chance?" "Because I saw you," I said softly. "Not just as someone important or wealthy or strategic, but as a man who deserved something real. And I didn't want to hurt you. But the longer I stayed, the more I knew this lie was going to. He turned toward me fully, his expression unreadable. And what do you feel now? I feel like I've done something terrible to someone I care deeply about. And I hate myself for that. But I couldn't go another day without telling you the truth. The silence between us stretched, heavy and still. Then Elliot reached out, gently taking my hand. I don't need sight to know when someone is telling the truth, he said quietly. I just need honesty. And you gave me that now, when it mattered most. Tears slipped down my cheeks, and I let them fall. For the first time in days, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't trapped in someone else's name. I was just Mia. And somehow he still saw me. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the faint beeping of machines and the rhythmic sound of Elliot's breathing. I sat beside him, my fingers laced with his, our hands resting between us like a silent vow. The surgery had ended hours ago, but the bandages still covered his eyes. We wouldn't know for sure if the operation worked until morning. Still, he looked calm, peaceful even. I hadn't left his side. Earlier that evening, before they wheeled him into the operating room, he reached for my hand and said something I would carry with me for the rest of my life. Thank you for staying, Mia. I swallowed back the tears. I stayed because I love you, not because I had to, not because someone told me to. He smiled, his grip tightening just a little. I believe you. I've always believed you. Even when I didn't understand it all, I felt it. I had kissed his forehead and whispered, I'll be here when you wake up. And I was. Now, in the stillness of the early morning, the first light of sunrise filtered in through the blinds. A soft orange glow bathed the white walls, painting the room in warmth. I watched it quietly, holding my breath as the nurse entered to remove the bandages. Are you ready? She asked him gently. He nodded. My heart pounded as she began to unwind the gauze. Layer by layer, his face became more visible. I gripped his hand tighter, half praying, half preparing for anything. When the final piece fell away, he blinked against the light, eyes fluttering open slowly, adjusting. Then he turned toward me and looked right at me.
Mia.
My name. Soft, certain. He didn't look surprised. He didn't flinch. He just smiled, like everything finally matched. The voice, the touch, the presence. Now, the face. You see me? I asked, barely above a whisper. I always did, he replied. That broke me. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I leaned forward, resting my forehead against his. He reached up and gently wiped my tears with his thumb. I know I don't deserve how kind you've been, I said through shaky breaths. I lied to you. I let this go on too long. And yet, he said, you also told the truth. You could have kept the lie going. But you didn't. You stayed through everything. You made my life feel real. I laughed softly through the tears. You have no idea how much I wanted to be seen. Not just noticed, but really seen. I saw you, Mia, he said again, his voice quiet and full of peace. Long before this moment, we sat like that for a while, in a space filled with forgiveness and something deeper, healing. Later that afternoon, when he was moved to a private recovery suite, I sat curled up beside him, his hand resting on my knee. What do we do now? I asked. He turned his head toward me, eyes still adjusting but focused.
Now?
We live. Not as part of a performance. Not for anyone else's expectations. Just us. No masks. No fake names. I smiled, heart full. I'd like that. I want a life where we start again. On our terms. So do I. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes, breathing deeply. You know, he said, it's ironic. Everyone thought I couldn't see. But I think I've always seen more clearly than most. I nodded, laying my head against his shoulder. The sun dipped lower outside, casting long shadows over the city. But inside that room, all I felt was light. The kind of light that comes after truth. The kind of light that doesn't blind, but reveals. The kind you wait for your whole life. The first sunrise of something real. A full year had passed since that day in the hospital, when Elliot opened his eyes and said my name like it was the only truth he ever needed. Now, we live in Ashland, Oregon, a small, sun-warmed town surrounded by pine trees and peace. Our home wasn't a mansion or a sleek penthouse. It was a two-story brick building with wide windows, a garden out front, and a sign that read the Horizon Center. It was our dream turned real. A space for people navigating blindness, some born into it, others facing it suddenly, painfully, to find tools, hope, and dignity. A place to begin again. Elliot and I ran it together. He taught music classes in the afternoons, guiding hands across piano keys, teaching rhythm, listening, and patience. He always said music helped him find light long before his sight ever returned. I worked with the newcomers during the mornings, helping them learn the layout, guiding their fingers across labels, textured walls, and the sound maps we installed to help them understand space through hearing. I taught them how to move with confidence, even when the world seemed uncertain. Every room had something meaningful. A wall of Braille poetry, a sensory garden, a recording studio, a kitchen designed for touch. People came broken sometimes, quiet and afraid, just like I had once been. But they left stronger, with heads lifted, his heart steadied. Some stayed longer than others. A few never left. We had 3 residents in the upstairs units now, people who helped out, taught, learned, and became part of the family we were building. Elliot often joked that he fell in love with the wrong woman but married the right one. Visitors were always curious. Our story had become something of a legend around town. One morning, while Elliot sat on the porch teaching chords to a group of teens, a little boy with thick glasses and soft curls tugged on his sleeve. "Is it true?" the boy asked. Elliot turned, smiling. "What's that? That you married the wrong person?" I watched from the doorway, my hands full of fresh towels for the guest rooms, my heart pausing just a beat. Elliot rested his guitar on his lap. "No," he said thoughtfully. "I saw the right person, just not at the right time." The boy blinked. "So, it wasn't wrong?" "It was complicated," Elliot said. "But the heart knows things the eyes sometimes don't." The boy nodded like he understood, even if just barely, and ran off to rejoin the others. Later that night, Elliot and I sat on the rooftop garden, a small keyboard between us, the stars dusting the sky with quiet grace. I watched his fingers move over the keys, then place mine beside his. He turned to me, his smile soft. "Still think about it sometimes?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted, but not with regret. More like gratitude. He leaned in, brushing a kiss against my temple. "We found our truth. That's all that matters." We began composing something new together that night. A melody that started with a gentle echo of our past and stretched forward into the quiet promise of everything still to come. There was no fear now. No lies. Just music. Just us. And in that song, in the life we built one sunrise at a time, I finally found the one thing I had never truly had before. A place to be myself. And someone who always saw me, even in the dark.